Hi, my dear ones. Here is finally my New Year's video for you, after it didn't work out. This morning out in the field because there was such a storm and everything blew away, and you couldn't hear anything. But now, here is my first video in the new year 2023. And for those who didn't see the first video from this morning, I warmly greet you again, and wish you a wonderful new year. I hope for you that this year will be the one that brings you the absolute breakthrough towards becoming happy and healthy, and I want to contribute a little to that with this video today. And of course, what else could it be about? It's about setting a few resolutions for the new year, in the sense of letting go of 10 negative habits that perhaps have been holding you back so far, that you weren't even really aware of, and yet they are destructive and not very helpful in your life. And now, of course, it's not about me annoying you with the idea that you should exercise more, eat healthier, quit smoking, and so on. That's kind of obvious. No, it's more about things like these. Mindset stories. That means thinking habits. More in that direction. And if that interests you, I'm very happy if you stick around. Welcome to Soul Tapping, the first video of the new year. It's about letting go of 10 negative, destructive habits. And we'll get started right away. The first point is called white lies. White lies are something that, according to statistics, we all supposedly tell. I saw a statistic that says people lie on average 25 times a day. That's quite a lot. And by that, I don't mean malicious lies intended to harm someone else, but those little white lies that happen throughout the day. Somehow. For example, I don't know, a friend of yours has a new hairstyle that you find awful, and she asks you how you like it, and you say nice. Or, I have no idea. The boss asks you why you're late again, and you're just too embarrassed to say that you overslept again, so you make something up like the bus didn't come. Or the classic. In school, the teacher asks, who did it? And no one owns up. Things like that, they're all little white lies. And basically, it's about being afraid of appearing in a bad light, in a negative light, or you hope to gain advantages to come across better. That's one possibility. Or the other possibility is that you don't want to hurt someone else. So, for example, even when friends ask you if we should meet today, and you don't feel like it or you're too tired or whatever, and you come up with some excuse for why you can't and don't have time today. Things like that. And basically, well, you could call it social lying, to some extent, because that's what it's for. Because our entire social life would collapse if everyone always told the truth. Still, I think we should all move a little more towards the truth. Every year, especially at New Year's, it's something I firmly resolved to do. Move more towards telling the truth. Sometimes it also has to do with overcoming your comfort zone. For example, standing by yourself and simply admitting, yes, I'm not doing well right now. Depressed individuals often experience being asked, how are you? And they say, yeah, good, and put on their everyday mask. In a way, that's also a form of protection, which is okay so that no further questions are asked. But think about it, feel a little within yourself. I believe there are situations where it's important for your self-protection. Maybe also for privacy reasons. You don't have to reveal everything about yourself. There are certainly situations where it's okay to lie sometimes, but check that out because it's not always the case, especially among friends. Because if you lie because you don't want to hurt someone, then please be aware. How does it feel for someone to be lied to? Isn't that even more hurtful? I believe friends benefit more when you are honest and when you express your opinion kindly and truthfully. Okay, it's about becoming more authentic indeed. That's also the way out of depression, that you train yourself to become more yourself again in front of yourself and others and to show that. Point 2 of negative habits that you should let go of is judging, condemning, or gossiping about others. I believe this is also a habit we often engage in without being aware of it. So, I think there are many situations where we quickly judge others, without knowing their story. When someone, I don't know, behaves in a noticeable way that you can't immediately categorize, if they have some kind of physical peculiarity or if they have strong Emotional outbursts, or quickly lose their temper, or if they look somehow strange, are always in a bad mood, or something else. Then we tend to quickly make a hasty judgment, even though we can't possibly know how that person comes to behave that way. They surely have reasons, and everyone has their own baggage they bring along. Yes, so pay a little attention to not immediately judging or evaluating others, because this has increased so incredibly during the Corona period due to the division of society. So just be aware. Everyone has a reason for their behavior. Accept people more as they are. And always keep in mind that they might have a story, a reason, a burden they carry that you don't know about. Because you want to be treated that way too. So treat others the way you want to be treated, namely with leniency, with understanding. And also see if it might be possible that you have an ass angel in front of you. That means someone who mirrors you. Someone who has something, a trait or so, that you also have but don't want to see in yourself. Because that's such a typical psychological mechanism where we tend to judge others for something we actually don't recognize in ourselves, have a problem yourself in. Instead, take a look, see what it has to do with you, that you're judging the other person right now. Okay, point 3 goes in the same direction, just the other way around. It's the negative habit of judging and blaming yourself. That's a classic thing in depression. When you're depressed, you're convinced that it's true. All these reasons for which you judge yourself, that you make too many mistakes, that you're not okay, this, that, and the other. You consider all of this to be completely real because it feels totally real, but it's not. That means if your goal for this new year 2023 is to finally get healthy and leave your stupid depression behind, then stop judging yourself. Even if you can't feel it at the moment, it's okay. It's a learning process to be able to feel that you're okay just the way you are. At the beginning, you don't feel it yet. But it's simply something you've trained yourself to do, judging yourself. You can also untrain yourself from it. And that's your task. For example, if someone else criticizes you, you make yourself wrong for it and initially accept it from them. You make yourself wrong for not having a happy relationship, for instance. You make yourself wrong if your partner cheats or treats you poorly. You make yourself wrong if something doesn't work out immediately, or if you make mistakes. You might make yourself wrong for having fears, for not feeling well at the moment, or that you, I don't know, can't achieve and accomplish the same as others at the moment, or whatever. There are so many things we make ourselves wrong for, even though we can't really help it. There's nothing wrong to be done there. And that's a habit that you can question and change. Always in the order. First step, notice awareness. Second step, love yourself for it anyway. And third step, change. So, interrupt and change thoughts. It's just a thought pattern. It's not real. There's nothing wrong with you. Point 4 is overwhelming yourself. A classic habit in depression, and become aware of it. Resolve to notice it in the new year, when you go beyond your limits, because it's a habit that's so deeply ingrained that we usually don't notice it. So, get used to paying attention to your energy balance, so you don't push too far beyond your limits. For example, make a list of your energy balance. What are the things you do in your life that give you energy? And what are the things you do that drain your energy? And then you can look below to see where you stand. Find out which there is more of. So, people who are depressed or burned out often have a negative energy balance. That means you have too many things that drain your energy and too few that give you energy. And see if you can somehow manage to change this habit and flip the balance, so that you do more things that give you energy. And in this way you can slowly recharge your battery. This also includes habits like perfectionism, where everything always has to be right and you can't make mistakes. And all of that. That is part of it because it's completely overwhelming. And then point 3, judging yourself. When you don't succeed, these are habits you should question. Point 5 of the negative destructive habits is constantly apologizing for everything. This is something often found among people with depression because these are individuals who have had this survival pattern from a young age to adapt and make themselves small. and to throw themselves on their back like a dog, so to speak, to submit or something like that. This is simply a pattern that was trained in childhood and can be unlearned. So, it's about checking whether you might be apologizing too often for things you don't actually need to apologize for, because there's nothing to apologize for. But you feel safer that way. That's what survival mechanisms are for, to make you feel safer. In reality, you're not in danger because you're not at risk. It's just that your brain needs an update, so to speak. This is an old story from childhood. It's like this. This feeling of the inner child, please, please love me again. That's why you quickly apologize for everything, just to avoid any blame or even more perceived guilt. It's important not to judge this pattern, but to appreciate it, because back in childhood, there was a good reason to develop it. So the pattern should be appreciated. Back then it was fitting, but now it just doesn't fit anymore. Now you're grown up and you need an update, so to speak. For example, if someone is ever mad at you, check if, when you immediately apologize, there's actually something to apologize for. Or is it possibly because of the other person, that they have some pain inside, felt totally triggered, and that's why they're mad at you? Not because you did something wrong. You should check such cases when you apologize. Stop, take a moment to pause. Have I really taken on guilt? I mean, objectively speaking. Often that's not the case. So only apologize if there's truly something to apologize for. Then, of course, it's right and important to do so. It's simply about the fact that sometimes there are people who have the habit of doing this too often. That means, I don't know, if you didn't make it on time, maybe it's not your fault that the bus was late or something. Yeah, so if it's not a white lie but something that really happened, then you don't need to apologize for it because it's not your fault. Or if you do something that causes you other inconveniences. For example, saying no. These things that you do for yourself is self-care. So you don't have to constantly belittle yourself and throw yourself to the ground. Or when someone asks you to do something, sure, yeah, sure. In that way. Just love me again. You can question that and not be submissive to everyone. Point 6 of the negative, destructive habits is called hoarding and collecting. This means you might have a habit of constantly buying things such as clothes, gadgets, or other items you don't really need and then have difficulty that you find appealing at the moment and later realize they were unnecessary, letting them go again. So, not being able to let go is a typical issue in depression where you can't throw anything away. Of course, there are also extreme cases, which on one side is a kind of shopping addiction and on the other side a kind of hoarding, where you accumulate things in your home. The new year is always a good opportunity to really declutter, to think beforehand before buying something, do I really need this? Or to look at the things in your home and ask, do I still need these? And if in doubt, to throw them away. Or to give them away or whatever. You don't have to produce extra waste, but simply to release them from your life, so to speak, because that can be incredibly overwhelming. When you surround yourself with clutter, just because you have fears of loss inside. Take a look at these fears of loss. What does it do to you when you decide to throw something away? And you can tap on that, for example. So, in any case, this is a habit you can check in yourself because decluttering on the outside cleanses the soul on the inside. Outside, inside, it always somehow goes together. Maybe I'll make another separate video about it with a new top 10 list or something on the topic of decluttering, because it's really something very helpful, especially for the new year. But not just then, always. Exactly. What is what, says the Cologne native in there. Cologne, basic rules. Point 7 is exactly the opposite, namely excessive saving. And I'm not talking about the fact that you, of course, need to manage sensibly with what you have available in terms of money or so. That's clear, and now things have become more expensive, you have to budget a bit. That's not what I mean, rather I mean a destructive habit where you never treat yourself to anything out of habit. So, that you never buy yourself something nice. That doesn't serve any practical purpose or so. Sometimes, every now and then, you can do that too. It's always about getting away from the extremes. Extreme buying and extreme saving, those are the two ends that are both unhealthy. Make sure you always find a golden middle ground somehow. Because, basically, it's the same pattern. It's holding on instead of letting go. You want to hold on to your money and don't dare to let it go. This might be related to the fact that you possibly have a feeling of worthlessness inside. And that's why you never allow yourself to enjoy life and to spend your money on unnecessary stuff or on nice things. Whether it's going to the movies or just treating yourself to something that isn't necessary but is allowed. So, there might be an issue of worthlessness behind it. Or a fundamental scarcity mindset. That you always think you need to hoard everything for bad times. Yes, that you have this kind of a basic pessimism inside you and think that bad times could always come. And if you're constantly thinking about the possibility of bad times coming, then well, it's not healthy. It doesn't allow you to enjoy your life with joy. Yes, but you should also feel free to spend money when you have the opportunity. Of course, it's really just about this habit. The 8th point of destructive habits is constant checking. And I'm not necessarily talking about people with obsessive-compulsive disorders. That's a special case, and I could make another video about that. It's about such a habit that many people have, to double-check things 10 times. For example, constantly checking the time out of fear you might be late, or checking on your partner, checking their phone, closely watching where they are, what they're doing, checking on the kids, where they are, what they're doing when they'll come home. Depending on the age of the children, it's naturally necessary, of course. But it's about having an inner fear, for example, that your partner might cheat or that something might happen to them, or something like that. Then you should work on these inner fears. Because this constant checking is very, very exhausting and very burdensome. It's a habit that has arisen from a fear. And I just want to give you this as a suggestion to take a closer look at these fears. This can also include constantly checking your body, like weighing yourself daily, or always checking if there's something wrong, if there's any illness or something like that. So that can be part of it. Or constantly checking your appearance, always looking in the mirror out of fear that you might embarrass yourself or something. Or, when you write text emails or text messages, you read them over 10 times to make sure they're perfect in terms of spelling, and if you can say it like that. Sometimes this also happens verbally, so to speak, where you recall certain conversations you've had 100 times afterward and go over them again. Was what I said correct? Could I have said something wrong? Could the other person have been offended by that, or whatever? That you go over it 100 times and analyze it in your head. Whether it was right, that consumes an incredible amount of energy. Or also, I don't know, also people who check if their neighbors put out the trash bins on time. Just observe yourself to see if you have such a control mechanism. And if so, then handle it the same way. As I mentioned earlier, first notice it in the first step, and in the second step, I still love myself, even when I've noticed this habit, and in the third step, let go and change. Then I have another. Point 9. That is media consumption. This is almost a classic belonging to the category of more exercise and healthier eating. But it's still so important that I want to mention it here again. Because I recently watched a video by Dear Joe Dispenza, where he explained why this media consumption is so addictive, what it has to do with dopamine levels in the brain's reward system. And that's something we really need to be aware of. That you simply make sure to have media-free times. Because it's just this overwhelming abundance. YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Netflix, you name it. And then the regular TV as well. And that also includes watching the news, all that negativity. It's a habit to sit down in front of the evening news at 8 p.m. Because something inside you thinks, there comes the need to control again, but I have to know what's happening in the world, I have to. No, you don't have to do anything. Stay away from negative news because they lower your vibrational frequency. It's not helpful because the news is full of 90% crises. What kinds of crises are there? You then get the impression that the world is only made up of crises because your subconscious is always listening to everything you do. And when you consume the news, there's a refugee crisis, a COVID crisis, a climate crisis, an economic crisis. Yes, of course, you then have the impression that the world is terrible and that there is no hope. And why am I even here? Stop consuming it. Limit your media consumption. And this especially includes those little mobile games and video games because they ensure that your reward system, your dopamine balance, and things like that are programmed to be stimulated externally. And otherwise, if there is no external stimulation, then your brain struggles. It becomes increasingly difficult to feel joy on its own. That means if you're dealing with depression and already have trouble feeling joy, it's even more dangerous to get deeply involved in this addiction potential. Limit the habit of constantly being engaged with media a little bit. You don't have to delete all your accounts right away. So don't go to extremes, but set up some media-free times. By the way, my new phone has a feature, I don't know if every phone has this, where you can monitor yourself. Your phone then tells you how much screen time you've had or something like that. Maybe use that, it might help you. And then I have the last point, the point 10, which is destructive habits. This includes whining, complaining, grumbling, feeling sorry for yourself, and really wallowing in your misery. That can be okay once in a while. But check yourself to see if it might be that you've made a habit out of it, that you don't even notice anymore. Whining is independent of external reasons. So even if you say, yes, but I have such a terrible life. Yes, but I have reasons. That's not a reason to whine. Whining is a habit, and it naturally develops when many things in life go wrong. But that's still not a reason. Because when you whine, when you complain, when you grumble, just like with the news, the subconscious, it always listens. You are programming yourself more and more to believe that everything is terrible. And then, according to the law of resonance, you also see the terrible things in your life. And then you have another reason to whine. So, try to catch yourself in this habit and stop it. These are the kind of people who always focus on the half-empty glass instead of the half-full one. That means in winter you complain about the cold, in summer you complain about the heat. If you're currently unemployed, you complain that you have no money. If you have a job, then you complain about your stupid boss or that you have no time. If you don't have a partner, you complain because you're so alone. And if you have a partner, you complain about them. That's what I mean, yes. That you always pick out the negative and then complain about it. That's the habit. It's not the external reason that makes you do it, but it's your brain that has been trained to do so. And this habit, you should let go of it. For example, there are already Facebook groups called something like complaint fasting. So there are more and more people who during Lent don't give up meat or alcohol, but instead give up complaining. And I can recommend that to you. You can do it anytime, not just during Lent, but maybe just any time. Now as a New Year's resolution, catch yourself doing it and then just say, stop. I won't do it anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. And I still love myself even if it happens again. Okay. That applies to all 10 points. When it comes to changing habits, it's always about first catching yourself, then loving yourself even if it was a habit of yours, and only then changing it. Because then the change becomes much easier. Because if you judge yourself for having had this old habit, then it's associated with pain. And then you won't want to look at it next time. And if you don't look at it, well, then the habit remains. That's why it's such an important component to love yourself for it, even if it's your habit now. Okay, my dears, I'm very happy that you watched until the end. As always, you are very welcome to share my videos, subscribe to my channel, and check out my website at www.feelingklopfun.de in our Facebook group. You are, of course, also very welcome to take a look. There is one for people with depression to exchange experiences. It's called Love Yourself because you are wonderful. And the second group is for people who have just about or already quite well overcome their depression, and who could imagine working as a coach or therapist themselves and helping others to overcome their depression. Then feel free to join our second group, which is called From Depression to Coach. I would be very happy about that. And now take care, my dears. I wish you a wonderful start to the new year. Bye-bye.